Greetings. It's been a little over a year since I purchased my Priority 600 bike, and today I'm going to show you how to change the oil. This is going to be a detailed tutorial. So I purchased this oil changing kit from the Priority website. I'll put a link to that in the description below. These are the contents of the kit. You got the oil, the syringe, a little piece of vinyl tubing, and then this metal insert for the output and input ports of the oil. And this is again for the Pinion Gear Box, so we're just going to pry off this top here. Also, I'll put a link to Pinion's video on how they do this on their website below if you want to compare their video to mine. So here we can see the planetary gear set for the shifter, and that grease is very old, so we'll clean that off later. But first things first, let's take the drain port out, and this is a 3mm hex key we're using, and we're using a yogurt container that I've cleaned out that's empty as our oil pan. Okay, now we're gonna do a lefty-loosey, spin the wrench counterclockwise. This is the insert port, and as we take this off, once we get this screw out and we get the drain screw out, the oil will flow out. I'm also going to use a little bit of a heat gun to heat on a low setting to heat up the oil in the gearbox to let it flow with gravity. And I have the bike hung up on the bike stand so that the oil port is pointed down with gravity. So my theory is just to let this oil flow out on its own instead of starting by sucking it out with the syringe. So once again, taking this top bolt out so you can get a good view of what it looks like for the flow to increase as the top bolt comes out. So you can see it, we go from a little drip to a solid stream. And I'm applying strategies here that I've used changing differential oil on larger vehicles than bicycles. So I'm just using this heat gun to send a little bit of heat into that insert port. So we're getting nice warm air to loosen up this oil. It's a little cold in my shop right now, probably around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Not sure what that is in Celsius. If you know, please put it in the comments below. So we're just giving it nice little heat. Not too hot, just some good warm air to let that oil flow through. It's a lot dirtier than I thought it would be. If your oil was cleaner after about 2,500 miles, let me know in the comments below. I do plan to send this oil in to find out what type of oil it is and if there's any metals in it. And I'll post that information in a new video within my Priority 600 playlist. So look forward to that. Make sure you're subscribed and set up for notifications if you're interested in seeing the results on that. Additionally, I'm curious to figure out what type of oil this is and what the weight of it is so that I don't have to spend $40 on 600 or on 60 milliliters of it next year. That's very, very expensive oil, the most expensive I've ever bought, actually. Okay, so we can see it's still draining, and that's the process. Next, we're going to blow a little bit of air into the insert port with an air gun from a pancake connected to a pancake air compressor that has about 20 pounds of PSI in it. So first we blow air with the syringe, get a little more flow out, and now we're going to blow air with this air gun. So again, I'm just using methods that don't involve the syringe, making the syringe kind of my last option because I want to limit the amount of contaminated or old oil that is going to be in this syringe. And so it's the last one I used. Doesn't really get anything in it. So now we can start focusing on what we need to do to put oil into the gearbox. So we have our new oil, and this container has a volume of 60 milliliters, and so does this syringe. So we want to make sure we get all this oil into the syringe. Actually took me a couple times, so I just filled it up once, and then I did a second fill to get more in, because the syringe says 60 milliliters and there's still some oil left in the container, but the container says 60 milliliters, so I'm just going to use everything that's in the container and trust the container over the syringe. You do what you think works best for you, and in general, you want to be right at that 60 millimeter mark. You could also buy a beaker and do a measurement that way. Okay, so we got our syringe inserted, we got our port inserted, and we are going to slowly insert this lubricant by depressing this plunger into the intake port. Of course, we have the draining bolt put back in before we did this, and now we're inserting the fill port. Other concepts: always take out the fill port bolt first before taking out the drain port bolt. I may have got that sequence out of order in this, but if you can't get the fill port bolt out, it's not even worth bothering getting the drain port bolt out. I'm just cleaning off this planetary gear grease right here, using a little bit of WD-40, using a little bit of heat just to warm it up, and just toweling it off with a shop towel. Just get it as clean as possible, get all that old dirty grease out. Make sure I get all the fuzzies out from this towel I'm using, and I'll also shift the bike a little bit. There's another shot of us putting in the drain port before filling. Sorry that was out of sequence. I'm hammering out a quick edit right now while my son sleeps on nap time, so we're not going to fix that. It's just going to be a one voiceover kind of situation. So this is our cleaned planetary gear set, and we're going to use some marine grade multi-purpose grease. That's the specifications there. It's the rainy season here in California, so I think this is the best grease for the job, and I have it at my shop. So the main thing is that you clean off the old grease and you get new grease back on there. If you know a lot about grease, just pick the grease that works best for you, and you're going to be okay. Good grease is better than no grease or dirty grease. So the priority bikes with these gearboxes, they are low maintenance bikes, and that's one of the reasons, the primary reason I purchased this bike. But low maintenance doesn't mean no maintenance. And if you have a gearbox bike and you never change the oil and you never grease the planetary gear hub or planetary gears, you're gonna have problems, and your bike is not gonna last as long as the same model bike with an owner that takes care of it. Okay, so we got our marine grade grease here. We got some out on a flat blade screwdriver. Just gonna put this on my hand. You can wear gloves when you do this. It's probably good to wear gloves. You don't want any of those chemicals going through your skin and into your body. They cause cancer and other harmful diseases, mostly cancer. All right, each one of these gears is getting a lot of fresh grease. I'm just kind of pressing it in there nice and gently. Look at that blue marine grade grease. Those are going to be some very happy planetary gears. They're called planetary gears because there's one gear in the center, and then there's 4 gears on the outside that orbit it like a planet. Alright, so we're just going to wipe off this extra grease with a shop rag, and then we will place our cover back on. Always match the indentation on the bottom first, not the top. The top has a wider range, and so you can see I'm doing this incorrectly the first time where I match the top first, and really you need to match the bottom first. So I match the bottom first, my second attempt, and then I can just click that top right on there. And Charlie.1 or Charlie 1.12 drivetrain technology cover is clipped back into place. All right, we got the cover off again because I decided to add all the extra oil. In this case, I'm trusting the volume measurement on the vial of oil that came from Priority and not the milliliter of the syringe. So I'm just using all the oil they gave me because it came in one container that's exactly 60 milliliters, and that's what their website says to do. There's a link to the Pinion how-to video below, so you can see that for yourself and just compare it to me. One other thing you can do, I'll put a link to a beaker in the description below. You can buy a beaker that's 60 milliliters and just measure your fluid in the beaker and then in the syringe and make sure you have the right amount going in. So that's why we ended up taking this off again and adding all the oil that came from Pinion in the oil change kit. All right, now let's take a look at the older oil. Okay, so we got the new oil right here, and it's 84 grams. I have the old oil here, and it's 53 grams in the yogurt container. So then we've taken the old oil out of the yogurt container, which is our oil pan for the work, and now we can measure it at 64. So we can see that it's lost some weight. Where did the 20 grams of oil go? I have no idea. Let's look at this one more time just so folks can see it. You can also see just how dirty the oil that came out of the gearbox was. That was very, very surprising to me. So after 64 and before it was in the 80s. In any case, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you around.